What up friends, Liron here, and today we're going to talk about dark values. What up friends, Liron here, thank you for joining me in another video. And today we're going to talk about dark values. Now I did do a video about getting dark values in watercolor, and I gave a lot of tips. Check it out, it'll be in a card somewhere here or here, and I do want you to check that out. But sometimes you want to get the dark values on the very first wash, okay, on the very first glaze. I always say sometimes you need to glaze it out, make a few layers, especially true with some colors that are inherently light. But maybe sometimes you want to get it to be really dark on the first go. Maybe you want to do it a la prima with one go, one wash. And for this, I have collected a few color combinations that I believe are a little unusual. Some of you may have used them before, but I try to avoid the more cliche color combinations that everyone uses, and I try to distill these to just a few that are really good in my opinion and will get it really, really dark on the very first wash. These compose mostly of blues and reds, okay? So you're gonna see this in just a moment. If you're ready, without further ado, let's change the angle and get started. Okay friends, so let's get started. The first combination I want to look at is French Ultramarine and English Venetian Red. So I'm just going to put down a really, really quick drawing in Timelapse, and then we're going to paint it. Okay, so let's have some fun here, and I'm gonna start out with just a bit of English Venetian Red. It's very, very strong, so you don't need to put a lot of it to get a very strong value. Now, I decided to start with kind of an onion, which is, I think, a good one because it has kind of a purple-ish tint. And let me show you just what this combo looks like, and I decided really to not swatch it like many do, just to make it a little more interesting. I see a lot of you have loved the idea of actually showing what the color looks like in some kind of a drawing form. So now I'm going to take a bit of the French Ultramarine and just add a bit of it to the mixture, and you can see how it turns it into this kind of a purple-ish mix. Now I'm going to try, because I talked about getting the values as dark as they should be on the very first try, I'm going to try and get that, okay? So here we have kind of a light value behind this part that's bulging up. Here it gets significantly darker, so let me mix a bit of a darker value here, using only these two again. And I find that blue and red are usually good for creating such dark values, especially if you want to get it on the very first wash. And the reason why is I think they just really complement each other and sometimes neutralize each other in a way that's very interesting. In this example, what's really interesting, I think, is that the blue is the lighter value here, and the English Venetian Red is really the one that's doing most of the really heavy lifting in terms of how dark it gets. Now you'll forgive me because I'm just trying to get this to, you know, to be dark enough, and it may not be like the most perfect painting job. What I will do is kind of blend some of that in, and I want to add some texture just by using the brush and sort of drawing these kind of lines, because the peel of the onion has some texture in it, and hopefully, even if it doesn't look like exactly like an onion, we're still gonna be able to see that it is one in fact. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is go back and maybe I'll lift some of the areas that are a bit darker. So I went a little crazy here, just a bit around here. And here on the very top we have an area that should be a little darker, okay? In fact, some of these areas here should also. And now I'm gonna just add some of the shadow in. and I think this is a nice attempt. So, not necessarily looks much like the onion I had in mind, but still okay. Hopefully I'll improve for the next ones. Next up we have an avocado, so that could be nice. Yeah. So anyway, this is it for this one. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we've got that quick and rough sketch of an apple here, and for this next one I'm going to use Phthalo blue and Cadmium red light. But for this combination you can use basically a lot of cool kind of blues. So Phthalo blue, Cobalt Azure, the one that I've been using a lot recently, will also work. And again, I'm not doing this obviously in realistic colors, so the result won't necessarily resemble an apple as much as I want, like this one. But I just want to show you how to do the same color kind of combinations like this. So let's start with a bit of the cadmium red. And I'm gonna start, and maybe I'll try and work a little slower with this one, okay? So I'm kind of just looking to see where the cools and warms are. And I have this area here. Let's start a bit warm at the top here. And it should be a little darker, so I'm just going to take out a bit more of the pigment. I'm going to put a little bit of red through here. I'm going to keep this area a little shiny. So a little bit of red right through here. I'm going to add a bit of pure red, not going to mix it on the palette. And I have to say, I'm out of practice in terms of making or painting rather while recording. So because usually what I used to do for a while now is I used to do more of this in the past, but in the last few months I've been focused more on first painting and recording and then narrating, and so I lost a bit of the ability to paint while I'm talking. So this is partially why the results aren't necessarily as good, okay? So you'll have to kind of forgive me about that. So now I think I'll add a bit of blue to the mixture here. And I'm going around that highlight. There's a highlight here, and there's like a mini highlight here, okay? And it shouldn't make a lot of sense right now. I'm just kind of putting in some base colors. Now I'm gonna let the red and blue finally mix a bit, and you can see that it does produce a bit of a darker value. Now if I want to get it a lot darker, I'll just add a bit more phthalo and red. And the thing is with this combination is that these two are such strong dominant colors that it's really easy. That's the reason why it's so easy to get a bit of darker values with them, okay? It's not that big of a challenge. Now I'll connect this to the shadow already, like this. And what I want to do is clean the brush and come back, and this area is a little lighter, so I'm just gonna use a damp brush to connect these areas, and then sort of to add a bit of color through here as well. Now sometimes you obviously need to wrap things up more nicely in an additional wash, so this is why some of this may not make sense right now. I'm really trying to go for it with just one wash and hoping that the result will be comprehensible, sorry. Yeah, so I'm gonna try and do a bit of wet and wet now. I'm gonna make this mixture a whole lot darker to really show you its power. I'm gonna use much less water here. And of course, when you do it wet and wet, you have to take into consideration the water on the paper. So I have to factor that in as well. So I need it to be even darker than it was up until this point. I'm gonna add just a bit more here through the darkest shadows, a bit down through here. And it's starting to take the kind of shape of an apple, I guess. Let's see, I think a bit of darkness through here. And there you have it. I'm gonna soften that highlight on the right. It shouldn't be as strong. So maybe like this. And this is pretty much done. Of course, some of the, the thing that really makes it tighten up together and look really good is the darkest darks. That for me it's just easier in terms of technique to get in the next wash. Okay, so it's not that it's impossible to mix them right now, it's just a little harder. Okay, so anyway, this is it for the Phthalo blue and cadmium red light. Let's move on to the next one, which is the indigo and sepia. Okay, so for this last example, I could zoom in a little more, which makes me happy. I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush now, just to give myself a little more control. And this is a pear. It's gonna be really interesting. I'm just gonna clean out some of this area here so that I can actually work on it. And the last combination, indigo and sepia. So again, clearly not realistic colors, and because I'm doing this in one go, the result may not be the most accurate. You'll have to forgive me about that. So starting with the indigo here, you really don't need a lot of it because it turns dark so easily. And I sometimes use that on my final washes just to get things to be really dark. So just a very interesting color. Now it is significantly dark through here, through this area, and here. So I'm using quite a lot of the indigo in these areas. So just putting down those darker values. And now I see it lights up towards the middle, so I'm just gonna clean my brush. And with clean water, I'm just gonna blend that in. And you see how that works. So I'm just kind of merging these two. Now I really want to show you, the goal of this video is to show you the capabilities of how dark this can go. So I'll try to do my best to not just turn it into a painting demo or something like this. But anyway, it gets dark through here. And there is a bit of darkness inside these areas. So I'm just gonna dab in some drops here and there. And I want to blend in this area now. So just with a damp brush, should be a little more wet. Getting the brush to be as wet as you want is a bit tricky sometimes. So now I'm going to switch off to sepia just to make things interesting. And Schmicke's sepia isn't necessarily my favorite. It's a bit hard on the brush, and it takes some time to kind of take it out of its pan. And you saw it was mixed a bit with green, but anyway. So this one goes, oops, now I went back to the indigo accidentally. They're just one next to another in my palette, so I'm just gonna expand that dark value I just put. I'm gonna use a bit of a wet brush to bring this color over here, okay? And this is a fun thing I like. I like to bring thick paint from areas where I can onto areas that are a little lighter. So I'm gonna add a bit of sepia here to the mixture on the palette. It goes a little darker here, so I'm gonna mix a lot darker than I think I should. And through here, oops, stepped out of the lines, which is perfectly fine. I'm gonna lighten it up through here while going around my highlights like that, okay? And I'm gonna go back to some of the indigo towards the bottom. And I think it's time to blend this highlight. So I'll try not to lose it, but rather just to really soften the edges. Like so. I feel bad that the first demo is the worst with the onion, but hopefully it won't make you run away. And I'm connecting this one. And with this highlight, I think I can kind of blend it even more, I guess. And it's time to add some darker darks that will combine, oops, went to the burnt sienna for a moment there. We'll combine the sepia and the indigo. Here it's much, much darker. And we also have a darker area right around here and a bit darker here. A few spots for texture. And I'll connect it to the shadow right around here. Something like this. And I can kind of blend it in this area. And I think this is it for this pair. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me zoom out and show you all of these. Okay, so here are all the combinations, and you may think that some of these, of course, lack in some darkness, which is true. For example, with this one, I'll definitely go back and make another wash on top of that. This one lost its shape completely. It looks like a purple potato. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed these combinations. Here we have the French Ultramarine and English Venetian Red. Spit in the face of the burnt sienna combination that is so common these days. The French Ultramarine and burnt sienna, I used to do this a lot, and I would just get super gray and boring paintings. So this is a nice kind of variation on that. We have the phthalo blue, or any kind of like cobalt, azure, or something like this. Sort of any cool green that looks, that blue that looks like that, together with a strong red, create these, mute each other. All of these kind of mute each other. And finally we have the Indigo Sepia, which is very interesting. This is kind of so this is a super red. This is kind of a middle red, red brown, and this one is brown, the sepia. So it's just a very interesting kind of variation on the blue and reddish brown scale. Okay, so I really hope you enjoyed this video and the way these demos went. I hope these color combinations taught you something new, opened your mind to some other possibilities, and now it's time to change the angle and wrap up this video. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I gave you some ideas on how to get those dark values on the very first wash, and I hope the demonstrations were helpful, and I just hope you had a lot of fun, and maybe I expanded your horizons just a little bit in terms of color selection. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Also follow me on Snapchat and Instagram, where I share daily updates, work in progress, things that are really fun, and side projects and things you won't see here. So follow me there. And this is it. I will see you again really soon in another video.